Hollywood's golden age was built on selling dreams of perfect romance. The reality? For many of its biggest stars, marriage was a nightmare that ended in a train wreck of a divorce. We're digging up the forgotten stories of the splits that were so scandalous, so bitter, and so packed with drama, they make today's celebrity gossip look tame. You won't believe the story of the starlet who auctioned off her husband's things on the front lawn. 1. Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks. Okay, so picture being the king and queen of, like, the whole world. That was Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks. Back in the 1920s, they weren't just movie stars. They were royalty. Mary was America's sweetheart, the super sweet girl everyone loved. And Douglas was the handsome, daring hero who did all his own crazy stunts. They even started their own movie company and lived in a mansion so famous it had a name: Pickfair. When they traveled, huge crowds would mob them, bigger than for any actual king or queen. They were the first real Hollywood power couple, but their love story started with a big problem. They were both married to other people. It was a huge deal back then, but they finally got divorced and married each other in 1920. For about 10 years, their life looked like a perfect movie. They threw awesome parties at Pickfair where people like Charlie Chaplin and even Albert Einstein would come hang out. They seriously seemed to have it all. But this is where the fairy tale starts to fall apart. As they got older, trying to be the perfect couple got really tiring. Douglas, the action hero, was getting bored. He started traveling the world without Mary, looking for thrills. Meanwhile, Mary's career was fading because of talkies, or movies with sound. The cute, young characters she played just didn't work as well when people heard her grown-up voice. This drove a huge wedge between them. He was always gone, and she was stuck at home feeling totally left behind. The real nail in the coffin was when Douglas had an affair. When Mary found out, that was it. The magic was gone. Their divorce in 1936 wasn't just sad for them. It was like the whole world was heartbroken. It was like finding out Cinderella and Prince Charming hated each other. The divorce itself was super bitter. They fought over their houses and all their stuff. It was a messy, sad end for the couple who basically invented Hollywood romance. 2. Elizabeth Taylor, Eddie Fisher. This story isn't just a divorce. It's a total Hollywood hurricane of backstabbing that involved 3 huge stars. In the late 1950s, Elizabeth Taylor was a megastar, famous for her amazing violet eyes and crazy love life. She was married to a movie producer named Mike Todd, and they were super in love. Their best friends were another famous couple, singer Eddie Fisher and actress Debbie Reynolds. Eddie and Debbie were America's sweethearts, the perfect happy couple. The 4 of them were always hanging out together. Then, something awful happened. In 1958, Mike Todd was in a plane crash. Elizabeth was completely crushed, left a young widow with 3 kids. Her friends, Eddie and Debbie, rushed over to help her through it. Or so everyone thought. What really happened next was a total bombshell. Eddie Fisher, who was supposed to be comforting his wife's best friend, fell for Elizabeth, and Elizabeth fell for him. It was a major betrayal. Eddie left his wife, Debbie Reynolds, and their 2 little kids, one of whom was Carrie Fisher, who'd grow up to be Princess Leia, to be with Elizabeth. The public was so mad. Eddie Fisher went from being a beloved singer to a total villain, and Elizabeth Taylor was called a homewrecker for stealing her best friend's husband. They got married in 1959, but the whole thing was built on scandal. Then, just when you thought it couldn't get crazier, it did. Elizabeth went to Italy to film the movie Cleopatra and started a steamy, super public affair with her co-star, Richard Burton. Now it was Eddie's turn to be humiliated in front of the whole world, just like Debbie had been. Elizabeth divorced him in 1964 without a second thought. He had given up everything for her, and she left him for the next guy. It just shows that in Hollywood, the biggest drama is the real-life stuff. 3. Bette Davis, Harmon Nelson. Bette Davis was not your average Hollywood actress. She wasn't just pretty, she was a total powerhouse. Known for being super intense and fiery, she played strong women on screen and was just as tough in real life. She wasn't afraid to fight the movie studios for better roles, which was a huge deal for a woman back then. In 1932, when she was just starting to get famous, she married a musician named Harmon "Ham" Nelson. Right from the start, they were a total mismatch. Bette was all about her career. Ham, on the other hand, was struggling. His band wasn't doing well, and he ended up being known as Mr. Bette Davis. He absolutely hated it. The whole thing was super awkward. Bette was making tons of money, while Ham was barely making any. This made him feel like a total failure, and according to Bette, he was always putting her down. She said he would make fun of her acting and tell her she was a nobody, which was basically the worst thing you could say to Bette Davis. The final straw was super dramatic. In 1938, Bette had to have a serious operation. She said that while she was in the hospital recovering, Ham left her for another woman. It was a total betrayal. But Ham had his own story. He was the one who filed for divorce, and he told the world it was because Bette was cruel. He said she cared more about her job than about him. The most embarrassing part for Bette was that Ham's legal papers talked all about her on-screen love scenes. He actually listed the actors she kissed in movies, trying to make it sound like she was doing something wrong. The divorce was a public mess that painted her as a cold, career-obsessed woman. It was a nasty split that left Bette feeling totally betrayed and humiliated. 4. Joan Crawford, Franchot Tone. Joan Crawford was the definition of a movie star. She worked her way up from nothing to become one of the biggest names in Hollywood. She was glamorous, tough, and super competitive. In 1935, she married her co-star, Franchot Tone. He was totally different from her. He came from a rich, fancy family and was a respected stage actor who thought Hollywood was kind of lame. He was handsome, smart, and Joan fell hard for him. They looked like a dream couple. But behind the scenes, their marriage was a total war zone of jealousy. Joan was the bigger star, and her studio, MGM, made sure of it. She got the better movies, the bigger name on the posters, and way more money. Franchot, who was a good actor, was always stuck in her shadow. Being called Mr. Joan Crawford really got to him. Their jealousy was out of control. They would compete over everything. People on their movie sets said they would try to steal scenes from each other, and would even count their lines to see who had more. Their fights at home were so loud that all of Hollywood knew about them. There were also rumors that they were both cheating. But the real issue was that Franchot just couldn't deal with his wife being more famous. Joan said he started drinking a lot and would get really mean. She even claimed that he got physical with her. He would show up to parties drunk and make a total fool of himself, embarrassing Joan. After 4 years of non-stop fighting, they got divorced in 1939. Joan told the judge that Franchot was a great husband when he was sober, but a cruel critic when he drank. It was a sad end for a couple that looked so good on paper. Years later, when Franchot was really sick, Joan actually took care of him, which shows how complicated their relationship really was, even after all the drama. 5. Ingrid Bergman, Roberto Rossellini. In the 1940s, Ingrid Bergman wasn't just a star, she was basically a saint. With her natural girl-next-door beauty and her roles as good, noble women in movies like Casablanca, everyone thought she was perfect. She was married to a doctor from Sweden and had a daughter. To America, she was the ideal wife and mom. Then, in 1949, she did something that caused a massive scandal. She was a huge fan of an Italian movie director named Roberto Rossellini, so she wrote him a letter saying she wanted to work with him. She flew to Italy to make a movie, leaving her husband and daughter back in the US. What happened in Italy was an explosion. Ingrid and Roberto started a very public affair. Soon the news broke that Ingrid, the perfect married saint, was pregnant with Rossellini's baby. People were outraged. They felt like she had personally betrayed them. How could the woman who played a saint act like this? The scandal was so big that a U.S. senator actually stood up and called her a powerful influence for evil. People refused to see her movies. She was basically kicked out of Hollywood. She got a nasty divorce from her husband, who then fought her for custody of their daughter. For years, Ingrid was kept away from her first child, which was incredibly painful for her. She married Rossellini, and they had 3 kids together. But their marriage was just as stormy as their affair. He was super passionate but also controlling and jealous, and she was a strong woman who had given up her entire life for him. They fought all the time. Their movies together flopped, and her career went down the drain. After 7 years, the fire between them burned out. They got a bitter divorce in 1957. Ingrid had sacrificed her career, her reputation, and her first daughter for this guy, and it all ended in another messy split. It took years for Hollywood to forgive her, but it was a powerful lesson in how fast the public can turn on its stars. 6. Lana Turner, Artie Shaw. Lana Turner was the ultimate Hollywood bombshell. Her love life was even more dramatic than her movies. She was married 8 times, but her very first marriage, to the famous and difficult bandleader Artie Shaw, was a wild ride that ended in a huge crash. It was 1940. Lana was a hot new star, and Artie Shaw was one of the most famous musicians in America, known for being a genius on the clarinet and for having a really bad temper. They met, and it was instant sparks. On their very first date, Artie asked her to marry him. Without telling anyone, Lana said yes. They ran off to Las Vegas and got married that same night. She was only 19. The marriage lasted just 5 months, and it was a total nightmare. Artie was a serious guy who loved books and deep thinking. He thought Lana's Hollywood life was dumb and shallow. He tried to fix her by making her read difficult books and criticizing her in front of their friends. He made her feel stupid. Lana, who was famous for being gorgeous and glamorous, was now in a marriage where those things were seen as bad. The guy who swept her off her feet was now tearing her down. The story that really sums it up is when Artie gave her a super hard book to read. When he asked what she thought, she just said, "It was okay." He supposedly lost it, making fun of her for being simple-minded. The end came just as fast as the beginning. Lana filed for divorce, saying Artie's constant insults made her miserable. But it gets worse. After they split, Lana found out she was pregnant. In a shockingly cold move, Artie reportedly demanded that she end the pregnancy and sent her off to deal with the traumatic situation all by herself. It was a horrible experience that stuck with her for years. Their divorce was a brutal lesson for Lana about love in the spotlight. 7. Frank Sinatra, Ava Gardner. Frank Sinatra was a legendary singer and actor with a famously short fuse. Ava Gardner was called the world's most beautiful animal, a stunning actress with a fiery, independent streak. When they got together, it wasn't a romance. It was a wildfire. Their relationship was one of the most passionate, stormy, and destructive in Hollywood history. They met in 1950, and the chemistry was instant. The problem? Frank was still married to his wife Nancy, the mother of his 3 kids. His affair with Ava became a huge public scandal. His good guy image was toast. His career took a nosedive. His record stopped selling, and his movie studio dropped him. It looked like he'd thrown everything away for Ava. They finally got married in 1951. Their life together was a total roller coaster. They were crazy about each other, but they fought as hard as they loved. Their fights were legendary screaming matches where they'd break stuff and say awful things, only to make up again. They were both super jealous. Frank hated the handsome actors Ava worked with, and she couldn't stand all the women who threw themselves at him. His failing career and her rising fame just made things worse. He was at rock bottom, and she was a huge star. This fueled his anger. There were stories of him getting really down, and their fights ending in dramatic breakups, followed by even more dramatic reunions. Ava later said she made the difficult choice not to have children with him because their life was just too crazy and unstable. After only 2 years of this chaos, they split up. Their divorce was final in 1957, but they never really got over each other. Frank made a huge comeback, winning an Oscar for a role Ava helped him get. He became bigger than ever, but friends said he never stopped loving her. Their divorce was the official end, but their toxic, passionate love affair haunted them for the rest of their lives. 8. Rita Hayworth, Orson Welles. Rita Hayworth was the love goddess of the 1940s, a stunningly beautiful actress and dancer. Orson Welles was the boy genius who directed the classic film Citizen Kane. When they got together, it seemed like a perfect match of beauty and brains. They got married in 1943 on a whim, during a lunch break from filming. Rita was totally in love. She admired how smart he was and was drawn to his huge personality. She had a tough childhood and hoped he would finally give her the stable, loving home she always wanted. For a little while, it worked. He would read books to her, trying to teach her things, and she created a glamorous, happy home for him. But soon, the usual Hollywood problems popped up. Orson was a creative guy who cared more about his work than about being a husband. He was always starting new projects, traveling, and spending money they didn't have. Rita just wanted a normal family life, but she ended up alone most of the time. On top of that, he cheated on her openly, which broke her heart. The most famous story about their bad marriage is from the movie The Lady from Shanghai. Orson was the director, and he cast Rita as the star. Then, in a move that shocked everybody, he made her cut off her famous long red hair and dye it blonde. Her hair was her signature look. The studio was mad, and Rita felt like he was just trying to control her and change her. The movie was a flop and a miserable time for them both. It was basically a symbol of their marriage, his ideas clashing with her happiness. Rita finally filed for divorce in 1947. She told the judge she can't take his genius anymore. The split was really hard on her. She truly loved him, but he couldn't give her the simple, steady love she needed. 9. Judy Garland. Vincente Minnelli. Judy Garland was one of the most talented people ever. A singer and actress who could make you cry with just one song. Vincente Minnelli was a brilliant director known for his gorgeous musicals. They met while making the classic movie Meet Me in St. Louis, which he directed and she starred in. They fell in love and got married in 1945. For a minute, it seemed perfect. They were a creative dream team. He helped turn her from the girl next door into a glamorous adult star. They made amazing movies together and had a daughter, Liza Minnelli, who became a superstar herself. But behind the beautiful movie sets, their life was a mess. Judy had been a star since she was a kid, and the pressure had led her down a dark path. She struggled with a reliance on prescription pills and had serious mental health issues. She was deeply insecure and often fell into dark depressions. Vincente was a very quiet, private person and had no idea how to handle Judy's intense mood swings. He loved her and knew she was a genius, but he just couldn't deal with the chaos. Their home became a battlefield of her emotional breakdowns and personal struggles. Their marriage started to fall apart under all the stress. There were also rumors in Hollywood about Minnelli's own private life, which just added more tension. They were two people who admired each other's talent a lot, but they were a terrible match when it came to real life. They finally divorced in 1951. It was heartbreaking because you could tell they still cared about each other. In court, Judy just sadly said that he was a good man, but they were too unhappy to stay together. The divorce was another sad chapter in Judy's life, which was full of incredible highs and devastating lows. 10. Clark Gable, Rhea Langham. Clark Gable was the king of Hollywood. He was the tough, handsome, charming actor that every woman wanted. In the 1930s, he was the biggest star on the planet. But before he became a legend and fell in love with actress Carole Lombard, he was in a marriage that was more like a business deal. In 1931, Gable married Rhea Langham, a rich woman from Texas who was 17 years older than him. When they met, he was a nobody actor, and she was a classy, well-connected lady. Rhea saw that he had star potential. She basically managed him, paid to get his teeth fixed, taught him how to dress, and used her connections to get him jobs. A lot of people thought he only married her for her money. Their marriage worked fine while he was climbing the ladder. She was his coach and his bank. But once he became a massive star, things changed. He wasn't her little project anymore. He was Clark Gable, the king. He started to feel stuck in a loveless marriage with a woman who felt more like his mom than his wife. Then, he met Carole Lombard. Their love was the real deal. They were funny, down to earth, and totally nuts about each other. Everyone knew they were perfect together. Gable wanted to marry Lombard, but there was one big problem: Rhea. Rhea Langham wasn't going to let him go without a fight. She knew she had made him a star, and she wanted to get paid for it. When Gable asked for a divorce, she demanded a huge amount of money. The divorce talks dragged on for years. Rhea had all the power, and she used it. Finally, in 1939, right when Gable was making Gone with the Wind, they made a deal. He had to pay her over $500,000, which was an insane amount of money back then. It almost made him broke, but it was the price of freedom. He married Carole Lombard right after, but his divorce from Rhea was a cold, hard business transaction. 11. Myrna Loy, Arthur Hornblow Jr. Myrna Loy was the queen of Hollywood and often starred with Clark Gable. She was famous for playing the perfect wife, smart, funny, and classy, especially in the Thin Man movies. She was a huge star in the 1930s. In 1936, she married Arthur Hornblow Jr., a successful movie producer. They should have been a perfect Hollywood power couple. Both were smart, successful, and at the top of their game. But their marriage had a huge problem. He was totally jealous of her career. Even though Hornblow was a big-shot producer, he couldn't stand that his wife was a bigger star. Everyone loved Myrna Loy, and her name alone could make a movie a hit. This created a lot of tension at home. In her autobiography, Myrna said that Hornblow was controlling and jealous. He wanted to be the most important person in their relationship, but her fame made that impossible. His jealousy showed up in a lot of ways. He'd try to tell her which movies to do and criticize her acting. Their home was not a happy place. She felt like he was always trying to make her feel small so he could feel bigger. To make things even sadder, they couldn't have kids. Myrna really wanted to be a mom, but she had several miscarriages. Dealing with that sadness on top of her husband's jealousy was just too much. She felt totally alone. After 6 unhappy years, they got divorced in 1942. The split was quiet, but bitter. For Myrna, it was a hard lesson that playing the perfect wife in the movies didn't mean you'd have a perfect life. The divorce was a relief because it freed her from a guy who was always competing with her. It was another classic story of a Hollywood marriage that couldn't handle a successful woman. 12. Hedy Lamarr, Jean Markey. Hedy Lamarr wasn't just one of the most beautiful women ever. She was also a genius inventor who helped create technology that led to Wi-Fi. But back in the 1940s, Hollywood only cared about her looks. Her love life was a series of super dramatic marriages. Her second one, to a writer and producer named Jean Markey, was short but really weird. They got married in 1939. Hedy had just escaped a really controlling first husband and was looking for some stability. Jean Marquis seemed like a safe bet, but the marriage was unhappy and strange from the start. The biggest issue was that Hetty felt like no one understood her. She was smart and curious, but Jean, like most guys, seemed to only care that she was beautiful. She got bored fast, but the weirdest part of their story was their decision to adopt a baby. In 1941, they adopted a son named James, but having a baby didn't fix their problems. Just a few months after they brought James home, Hetty filed for divorce. This is where it gets really strange. In court, Hetty said something shocking. She claimed she never even wanted to adopt a kid in the first place. She said Jean Marquis pressured her into it and she only did it to make him happy. It was a crazy thing to admit and showed just how messed up their relationship was. After the divorce, things with her son got even more complicated and sad. Hetty tried to raise James on her own for a while, but her life as a movie star was too chaotic. She later got married again and had her new husband adopt James. But then that marriage ended too. Eventually, Hetty and her adopted son stopped speaking altogether. Their divorce was more than just a breakup. It started a painful family drama that lasted for years. 13. Mickey Rooney, Ava Gardner. Mickey Rooney was one of the biggest stars in the world in the early 1940s. He was a ball of energy who starred in the popular Andy Hardy movies. He was basically America's favorite teen. Ava Gardner was a stunningly beautiful young actress who was just getting started. She was a total unknown when she met the most famous actor in the country. Mickey chased after Ava like crazy. She wasn't so sure at first, but it was hard to say no to his energy and fame. The head of their movie studio hated the idea. He thought it would ruin Mickey's clean, all-American image. He was right. The marriage was a mess from the very beginning. Mickey was not the sweet kid he played in movies. He was a huge party animal who loved to gamble and hang out with his friends. Ava, who grew up in the country, just wanted a quiet life. Instead, she was married to a guy who was never home and, as she quickly found out, was cheating on her. They were total opposites. He was basically a kid who just wanted to party, and she was a young woman who wanted a real husband. She later said their biggest issue was that he'd rather play golf with his buddies than spend time with her. She would just sit at home waiting while he was out all night. Ava was also super jealous, and Mickey gave her plenty of reasons to be. She would find proof that he was cheating, and their fights were like explosions. She was not the type of person to just sit there and take it. After just 1 year of this chaos, Ava was done. She filed for divorce in 1943. The official reason was cruel treatment, but the real reason was his non-stop cheating. The divorce was a huge scandal and was the beginning of the end for Mickey Rooney's time as a top star. For Ava, it was a painful first marriage, and it was just the first of Mickey's 8. 14. Laurence Olivier, Vivien Leigh. Laurence Olivier was known as one of the greatest actors of all time. Vivien Leigh was the gorgeous and talented actress who would forever be known as Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind. Together, they were the most famous and respected acting couple in the world, basically the king and queen of the theater and movies. Their love story started as a big scandal. They were both married to other people when they fell in love in 1937. They had to wait years to get divorced so they could finally marry each other in 1940. For about 10 years, they were the toast of the town. They starred in plays and movies together, and everyone admired them. But behind the perfect picture, their relationship was being torn apart by a terrible illness. Vivien Leigh had bipolar disorder, which doctors didn't understand very well back then. This meant she would have periods of crazy high energy, and then fall into deep, dark depressions. Olivier, who loved her deeply, tried to deal with it for years. He tried to be her protector, but it was exhausting. Her illness made their life together almost impossible. There were stories of her having huge, angry outbursts and then not even remembering them later. It put a huge strain on Olivier, who was also dealing with his own massive career. As time went on, her condition got worse. Their fights were awful. The perfect couple was living in a private nightmare. Olivier loved her, but he was worn out. He felt like he was losing himself trying to take care of her. Finally, after 20 years, he couldn't take it anymore. He fell in love with a younger actress, Joan Plowright, who gave him the peace he needed. He asked Vivian for a divorce. She was completely devastated. She never really got over him. The divorce was finalized in 1960. It was a super tragic end to a famous love story, caused not by a lack of love, but by a sad illness that they just couldn't beat together. 15. Joan Crawford, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Before she married Franchot Tone, Joan Crawford had another famous Hollywood marriage to the son of a movie legend, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. He was the handsome son of the silent film superstar Douglas Fairbanks Sr. They met in the late 1920s, when Joan was a tough, ambitious actress and he was basically Hollywood royalty. They got married in 1929. Joan desperately wanted to be liked by her husband's famous family. She looked up to his dad and his stepmom, Mary Pickford, who were the king and queen of Hollywood. She tried to completely change herself to fit in with them. She started reading fancy books and studying art, trying to become the classy lady she thought they wanted her to be. The biggest issue in their marriage was how different they were. Douglas Jr. grew up with money and privilege. Joan grew up poor and had to fight for everything she ever got. She was always trying to prove she was good enough. The worst part was her relationship with her in-laws, especially Mary Pickford. Mary apparently looked down on Joan and thought she was a social climber who wasn't good enough for her stepson. For a long time, she wouldn't even invite Joan to their famous mansion Pickfair. Being dissed by the Queen of Hollywood really hurt Joan. While Joan was trying to fit in, her own career was exploding. Soon, she was a way bigger star than her husband. This totally flipped the power in their relationship. Now he was the one in her shadow. It was all too much for the young couple. After 4 years, their marriage fell apart. They divorced in 1933. Joan said that Douglas got bored with her, but the real reasons were more complicated. They were just too different. The divorce showed that no matter how famous she got, Joan Crawford couldn't buy her way into the royal family of Hollywood, which just made her even more determined to succeed on her own.